All right, we are back here talking March Madness on the Just and the Suffering podcast. The first weekend's in the books. Joining me today, our co-host of the month of March, the host of the Seeing Red podcast, Troy Mauriello is here. Troy, how are you?
Mike, I'm doing well. It's good to have the madness back and happy to be on for another week.
Absolutely. Was certainly very mad, I will say that.
Yeah, it was definitely a typical March Madness weekend, I would say, or weekend. We got a couple of overtimes. I don't think any buzzer beaters, but a couple of last second shots, and just a bunch of great games. And we have a Cinderella as well. Yeah, it was just a classic March Madness weekend. Of course, we had it last season, but it was different with, all the COVID rules in place. So it's good to, have it back to normal for the first time since 2019. And, like I said, we got the upsets, we got the Cinderellas, we got the close games. Just very, very happy to have it all back.
Yeah, I think the good point here you mentioned here with the whole like everything back because last year we had a tournament was in the bubble, so like
Mhm.
it was all Indianapolis and limited fans. Now you have full fans, you have the cheerleaders back, you have the bands, like all the staples of March. And yes, we didn't get a buzzer beater, but we did get a lot of like fun moments throughout the weekend that made it very exciting.
Yeah, exactly. And even just like individual plays that we're going to see a bunch. I mean, we saw that the Arizona dunk last night, the Auburn dunk from the first weekend. We got the cheerleader getting the ball out of the top of the backboard. I mean, it's a lot of fun things that I'm sure we're going to be seeing in a couple weeks when they do one shining moment. But yeah, just overall very, very great to have it back, at different sites. You get the different types of crowds. You got Wisconsin playing kind of like a home game on Sunday night and ending up losing that. You go out west, you come over here. It's just fun to kind of have it all back to normal as we've known it really before the past 2 years.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's get to the big storyline of the week because obviously we knew this going in. We knew St. Peter's would be our big storyline heading into the second weekend, right?
Yeah, absolutely. We totally planned for this.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, St. Peter's coming out of the MAC, and it was so funny watching the select show. I think they were the 68th team to have their matchup revealed. They were really the last one we saw get against Kentucky. They come out there, they dominate Kentucky regulation. They withstand overtime, which you never see when these high seas in the ground for overtime. You figure, oh, the top seeds got to find a way to win out. It doesn't happen. They basically go wire to wire win over Murray State. It's another great team. And now they're in the Sweet 16, first MAC school ever to get there. So incredible run.
Yeah, and again, just everything that this month and this tournament is all about. A team like that absolutely no one was talking about. I mean, I would say probably 75% of people had Kentucky, in the Elite Eight. I would say at least, and a good amount of people had them in the Final Four and even winning the thing. I would say a good number of people, and they're bounced in the first round by this little school with what 3,000 kids that go there in the middle of New Jersey and Jersey City. It's a great story. A little school like that taking down Goliath, and like you mentioned, I mean, just the fortitude of that team. To play a wire to wire game with Kentucky, to not get it done in regulation, to go to overtime, and to still beat them. I mean, like you said, once that game went to overtime, I figured Kentucky was going to win by 8 to 10 points. They'd pull away at some point. At some point, you kind of figured the talent was going to kind of overwhelm St. Peter's, and it just never did. That coach Shaheen Holloway, you could just tell how well coached they are. You've seen some of his quotes post game, how tough that team is, and then like you mentioned, following that up, 48 hours later with a win over Murray State, a team again that had won, how many games in a row, and they really dominate that game. I mean, they never look back in that game. Just an incredible story, and you're curious to see how far it can go for them now. But just everything that March is all about. You have the Cinderella, the 15 seed that no one saw coming. There probably wasn't 10 brackets in America that had St. Peter's in the Sweet 16, and now here we are. So just a fantastic story.
It's also fun with St. Peter's too, because I mean, like most of the people in the country had no idea who the hell they were. Like you and I are unique insight because we each watched our team play like St. Peter's this year. Like I actually want to beat them twice. You watched St. John's beat them in the non-conference schedule. And then we know that team is good. I mean, I took the points in the spread against Kentucky. It was 18 and a half. I said they're gonna grind it, they're gonna keep it closer. And I had no scenario I think they would win that game.
No, no, and to your point about not a whole lot of people knowing about them. I mean, this is a maybe not a program changing thing for St. Peter's, but you talk about the one shining moment. Like this is their program's one shining moment. 20 years from now, in 2042, we're going to be saying, hey, remember when St. Peter's beat Kentucky and made that run to the Sweet 16? It's something that their school will always have. It's something that can kind of, invigorate a program, you could say, as well. Just very, very cool to see. We're going to be talking about St. Peter's like we talked about George Mason and Loyola Chicago and UMBC and Florida Gulf Coast, all these like lower seeds that made runs. It's just something that their program will always have, which is really, really cool.
Yeah, I think in terms of like upset stature here, I mean, in terms of pure like spending disparity between them and Kentucky, it's like massive. Like, I mean, we've seen the gym they play in Run Baby Run, which is not, it's like, it looks like a high school gym. It's a nicer one, but it is that size. And I mean, the entire athletic budget for St. Peter's, that includes all their programs, I think is about $1.5 million. And that's about like a sixth of John Calipari's salary. So it tells you all you need to know.
Yeah, exactly. It's completely David taking down Goliath. And yeah, in terms of, I think it was like the fourth or fifth highest upset by point spread as well in the NCAA tournament, or top five certainly. Yeah, it's going to go down as one of the biggest upsets ever. And like you mentioned, to the fact that they did it in overtime, that the fact that they gave up a lead, they led most of that game, and they still were able to close it out in overtime, just speaks to the incredible job that Shaheen Holloway has done with that team.
Yeah, we'll touch back on them in a minute, but I want to go to the other locals here who were not nearly successful as St. Peter's here. I mean, you have Rutgers collapsing against Notre Dame in the first four. They lose in double overtime and a thriller on Wednesday night. UConn gets Teddy Allen out of the tournament by New Mexico State. And then Seton Hall just doesn't show up against TCU. Which of the locals think had the worst performance in March?
Yeah, it was probably Seton Hall, to be honest with you. Just getting run out of the gym by TCU. They were down 10, before you could even blink in that game. They were never for a second in that game. I know UConn kind of had the hopes of maybe making a run. I thought that they could be a Sweet 16 team for sure. And it's disappointing that they kind of bow out in the first round like that. But Seton Hall, it was pretty clear that Kevin Willard had his mind elsewhere during that game, that his preparation probably wasn't as focused on TCU as it should have been, with the news of him going to Maryland. Yeah, and that's just a disappointing result for them. Then that's kind of been a string of disappointing results in the NCAA tournament for them. Losing what, 4 out of the 5 times that they've been there in the first round. Yeah, so that's I mean, we weren't expecting Seton Hall to make this big run, but to just get run out of the gym by TCU, who again probably proved to be a little bit better than maybe they were seeded, going down to the wire against Arizona on Sunday night. But still, I don't think TCU was that much better than Seton Hall that should have been, a 25, 30-point game at some points. So definitely a disappointing performance from Kevin Willard, and then of course from Seton Hall.
Yeah, I know a lot of the Pirate fans right now are very angry at Kevin Willard, especially with the way he left. And I will say, I think some of the slayer is unfair because that program was a disaster when he showed up. When he left Iona in 2010, came over, and now they're NCAA tournament regulars, which you and I know with follow these. That was never a case for Seton Hall. They make usually like one run every 5 years, and they would never be there. But I would be very upset with the way that, like the way they played. You could basically tell the players knew he was going to leave, and they just didn't have the energy to get up for that game, which is a problem. And Kevin Willard does look very weaselly the way he left in terms of like, oh, I don't know what's going on. I got to talk to my agent, and basically creating a distraction for St. Peter, saying, oh, I want Shaheen Holloway to take my job if I leave, where basically he knows he's leaving. And that's not a good look.
Exactly. Honestly, I appreciate the honesty with him that he said, it's up in the air right now, that he didn't give some kind of cliche answer or something like that. But you don't do it with a team that's still playing in the tournament. At that point, St. Peter's had a game in less than 24 hours. And like you said, that just creates a distraction for them. If they weren't playing in the tournament and you want to maybe give an endorsement to him, that's fine. But the fact that St. Peter's was still playing, it doesn't really sit right with me, that brutal honesty from Willard. But yeah, you can't discount what he did for that program. Definitely turn them around. Definitely turn them into a consistent NCAA tournament team. And now, if it is Shaheen Holloway's job next year, you got to see if he can kind of build on that, because Willard was very successful in getting them to a top half of the Big East. An occasional top 25 type season, making 3 tournaments every 4 years, but then not really going anywhere in the tournament. Now, you could say in 2020 they might have done that. They were a top 15 team for most of that year. That might have been the year, but still, they did not do it under Willard, where they made this second weekend run. So if it is Shaheen Holloway's job, we'll see if he can advance their program even further from where Kevin Willard left it.
Yeah, I think obviously the Willard thing. I feel like the St. Pete, the Seton Hall fans be very happy with that trade. The end of this, assuming I think we are both agreeing. We did agree that that job Seton Hall is to lose at this point.
Yeah, yeah. It seems like it's kind of the worst kept secret in college basketball right now that he will be replacing Kevin Willard. But we've seen strange things happen. Maybe a much bigger job opens and blows him out of the water. But with him being a Seton Hall alum, it makes a lot of sense for him to go there.
Yeah, I think they're gonna take all the headlines because they're in the Willard exit, but I think UConn is gonna get a lot more heat long term because that loss in New Mexico State was bad. Teddy Allen, they basically dominated them in that game. Arkansas managed to contain him, UConn couldn't, and then it was a pretty talented team that Dan Hurley now has not managed to win a tournament game at UConn, which is again not I'd say historically successful program. So you feel the heat to start rising there.
Yeah, exactly. That's two straight disappointing NCAA tournament exits for UConn after relatively successful seasons in the Big East. Regular seasons in the Big East. And now both years they drop out. Last year they play a really ugly game against Maryland, and now this year against New Mexico State. UConn is about winning and winning championships. And so far since Hurley's been there, they haven't won a Big East regular season or Big East tournament title, and they have not won an NCAA tournament game, and that's just not going to cut it. I think Hurley is still one of the best coaches in the conference for sure. But he's got work to do. I think that's when you're at a school like UConn that's won a couple of national titles in the last 20 years. The expectation is titles, and when you're back in the Big East, and when you have the budget, and when you have the players coming in, you're expected to do more than a first round loss to New Mexico State, and I think that I thought that they could have been a Sweet 16 team. Like I said, I picked them to go to the Sweet 16. So definitely a disappointing exit for them. I would still say they're trending the right direction, but they gotta. I would say next year is a real year that they at least have to win a tournament game.
Yeah, I mean, given the expectations there, I would not be surprised if they are, one and done again, that we start seeing the push to get rid of him, sort of like what happened with Pitt with Jamie Dixon and with Texas Rick Barnes, where he says, oh, he's good, but we can't go above this level with him. And for this program, I think they're going to push for more.
Yeah, and like we mentioned, that fan base, they want winners. If he was my coach at St. John's and we made 2 straight NCAA tournaments, I'd be fine with that. But UConn is on a different level. They're a step up from some other schools, and those fans, they expect championships. And when you're losing in the first round to New Mexico State, a year after losing in the first round to Maryland, when you're not advancing very far in the Big East tournament, fans, get angry. And I've already seen some fans kind of questioning if he's the right guy. So yeah, if they have an early exit next season, kind of in a similar range where they're a 5-6 seed maybe, and they lose in the first round again, I think that those calls for his job are going to start coming up a little bit more than they are right now even.
Yeah, I think one other thing I want to text you before we go to the big picture more is the officiating of this weekend, which, I hate to go after the officials because they have a very difficult job. It's obviously dealing with a high pace, fast paced sport, like split second decisions here. But some of these calls this weekend were just unacceptable to me. I mean, you have like the technical foul in the Illinois game where he's hanging on the rim and he's not really hanging on the rim. They called for that. The Brady Manek ejection against Baylor to almost near collapse for the Tar Heels. You had the foul sequence at the end of the Arizona game last night where they should have gotten a foul on TCU, had a chance to shoot free throws. They did not call it. And you had the situation where it looks like whistles were completely favoring one team. Like, that's a problem. And that's really a turn off people who are casual fans of the sport.
Yeah, exactly. And as you and I are fans that watch this from November to now, we're kind of used to this type of officiating. The officiating isn't great in any sport really, but especially in college basketball year round. Yeah, but as a casual fan, when you're seeing some of these calls like that, I'm sure it rubs you the wrong way. And just as a general note that I picked up, some of these reviews in these games are so long, and I know that that's not necessarily an officials thing. I guess it is, but they're looking at the same 3-4 replays for 2 minutes, 3 minutes in a game. The final 2 minutes of these games is taking 20 minutes of real time because every single tip ball, every single deflection, you got 3 players going like this, waving their fingers, and then they got to look at the monitor. And, it's just not a very, fun thing to watch as a viewer. This isn't my original thought, but of course I've seen people say, if it needs to be clear and obvious to overturn something, if you're not seeing it within like a minute or 90 seconds, just stick with the call on the floor. We don't need these reviews going for 4 minutes at a time, where the players are just standing there, where the announcers are just making small talk, and it's just not a good watch. So that's another just general thing that I've noticed. So many reviews, especially on out of bounds plays in the final minute of or 2 minutes of games. It's too much. Just if you have a call, either stick with it, or if you have it obviously that you can overturn it. But that's just one thing that I really picked up on when you're watching these games in succession, is the reviews are out of control.
Oh, they absolutely are. I mean, I feel like watching these games, and you're ready them back to back to back to back on different channels here. And I did notice, especially like if the game was close, I feel like you could basically, most college games take 2 hours in regular season. I think you could add a guaranteed half hour at the end of every game because for anything was close. And I'm sure, like, I know as much as good as Gene's territory is at his job, I'm sure like the big wigs of CBS are not having their entire primetime lineup on Sunday being pushed back about 40 minutes because the end of the Duke Michigan State game takes forever.
Yeah, yeah. The end of these games takes far too, even with the fouling. I mean, I understand it's the NCAA tournament, but if you're down 9 with 20 seconds left, the game's over. Let the clock run out. We don't need to foul 4 more times. The final 2 minutes of these games, they just take too long. It's not enough action, too much fouling, too many reviews. I hate to complain because it was a fantastic weekend, but if there was one big negative, I would say that was it for sure.
I also got to call out the casual like NBA fans. I was like, oh, college basketball sucks. It takes too long. I'm like, fast forward to the NBA playoffs. They got the exact same problem there too.
Yeah, exactly. And one thing that I did notice, in contrast with the NBA, a lot of these games were starting out, and there would be 12 minutes left in the first half, and the score is 10-9. We had
Yeah,
a lot of slow starts
that's not good.
Yeah, exactly. It's not a great thing to watch as a viewer when, for 25, 30 minutes of real time, you've seen 5 baskets made. That's the shot making was not great. Again, you would understand it more on Saturday and Sunday when guys are playing their second game in 3 days. But yes, a lot of these games really started off with slow offenses. That really surprised me, actually.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember. I think the one call I remember specifically, I think like the Illinois game, I think the first round game, like they had a game that was playing in the 40s, like where the game that was on my channel was like in the 70s, and then the same amount
Yeah.
of time. Like, come on.
Yeah, and I mean, listen, I like the good defense, but no one wants to watch a game in the 40s. Let's get into the 60s, let's get into the 70s. That's certainly a more entertaining product.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's go ahead here and do some big picture stuff. Give me your 3 biggest winners of the first 2 rounds of the NCAA tournament.
Yeah, well, I mean, we've spent all year ripping on the ACC, and they get 3 teams into the Sweet 16. How about that? I think we all kind of figured Duke would make it for sure, but North Carolina, big upset over Baylor. That was awesome. And then getting Miami in, which was kind of a team that we didn't really see coming. Miami comes out of nowhere and they knock off Auburn. That was impressive for them. So the ACC, kind of ripped on all season long, especially by us as kind of a weaker conference. Turns out they actually ended up being pretty solid. So they're my first winner for sure. Do you want to go back and forth, or do you want me
Yeah,
to just
yeah,
go?
we'll go back and forth here. I think
Okay, go ahead.
I'll throw another winner out here in general. I'm gonna say also. I mean, besides the ACC, which is obviously my number one pick on the board here, I'm gonna
Mhm.
say the Houston Cougars because this is a team that you and I were sitting in the first round going, oh, like they're gonna get upset, like they're not really that good. They find a way to basically dominate UAB, which was a very hot mid-major, and then they
Yeah,
crush Illinois. So I
yeah.
think like the Cougars are a big winner this week.
Definitely, yeah, yeah. Houston, what a job Kelvin Sampson has done there with that program. Revitalizing them right back into the Sweet 16 after a Final Four this year. So, just an incredible job there by him. Another winner I got, I'm gonna say Purdue. They get by Texas. They play a close game with Texas. Obviously, they cruise in the first round. And you look at their path to the Final Four, and it's not that tough. They're 1 and they're 2 seed in that region. We said that region was going to kind of be a little bit of chaos. You look at their path, they get to play St. Peter's. I know that we've been waxing poetic about St. Peter's, but that's still a 15 seed in the Sweet 16. and then you possibly get the winner of UCLA or North Carolina, which is a 4 and an 8 seed, two teams that you feel like you can beat. So, not only getting through, but the path to the Final Four for Purdue is kind of open here. So, obviously they get through Texas, but just looking forward, I have to feel like that's a pretty big win for Purdue.
Yeah. I'm going to say Kansas also a massive winner. We talked already about how weak their region was when they started here. Since we started the tournament, Auburn is gone. Wisconsin is gone. Iowa is gone. Probably the three teams are the biggest threats to beat them, all out before the Sweet 16. I mean, they have a Providence team next up that they're probably better, way better than. We'll find a way to win on talent alone. And then the other side of that bracket is Miami and Iowa State. If Kansas not make the Final Four, it's probably the biggest upset of the whole tournament.
Yeah. The Kansas is, I mean, we said that before, it looked like they were going to kind of cruise in that region. And now with Auburn and Wisconsin out, I mean, I just, Providence, I would say, has certainly played up to their, or has certainly played, I would say, outplayed their expectations, but it's not too tough of a path to the Final Four for them. In terms of my other winner, though, I was actually going to go with Providence. Impressive for them to get through to the Sweet 16. How about that? A team that I think a lot of people were questioning the validity of their regular season. They were the Big East regular season champs, of course. They kind of, maybe play into those talks a little bit with their Big East tournament performance, getting run out of the gym on Friday night against Creighton. And then they come out and they're in the Sweet 16. Now they had to beat a 13 seed and a 12 seed to get there. But still, I mean, this is a Sweet 16 season. And, we talked about St. Peter's. They will always have that. Providence is not a school that is a consistent, they're an NCAA tournament team more often than not, but they are not a consistent, nationally ranked team. They are not a consistent Sweet 16 team. They're playing in a second weekend, and that's something that is a great job by them. Ed Cooley's done a fantastic job. They'll always have that. So, for a team that has kind of been ripped on all season long, they get through the Sweet 16. Again, they play two seeds that are double-digit seeds, but they're in the Sweet 16 now. Now they get a chance to play against Kansas, so that'll be a fun game. So that's another winner for me.
Yeah, Providence also, I did have the fun weekend saying, oh, yeah, like nobody respects us. Nobody pick us to win, which I said, you know what, fair. I was one who had them out the first round. I'm sure you probably had them out pretty early too.
Yep. Yeah, I had them out in first round. I'm mad at myself for that one, but yeah, had them out first round.
But the thing about it is now they started a trend now where every single higher seed now claims that they are underdogs. Nobody's expect them. Like I heard Paolo Banchero yesterday for Duke beats Michigan State. Like, oh, like nobody picked us to win. I'm like, really, dude?
Yeah.
Like, nobody had you losing a 15 seed. I can't think of many people have you losing either Davis nor Michigan State in the round 32.
Yeah, Duke is never able to play the underdog card. That's not a thing for them.
Yeah, it's not a thing. I think my last winner here, I'm going to stay in that East region. I'm going to say UCLA is a massive, massive, massive winner here because the top two seeds in the region are gone. They had some trouble against Akron in the first round there, but the way they came back again and dominated St. Mary's, and St. Mary's is a very good basketball team. I don't give them matchup problems. They crushed that game. Let the white switch came on. I think if that switch stays on, they can get to the Final Four out of that region very easily.
Yeah. Very, very big weekend for them as well.
All right, let's go the other direction here. Who are the biggest losers here? We can go player, we can go conference. What are you saying?
I just wax poetic about Providence, but honestly, the Big East kind of let me down a little bit. Only getting two teams into the Sweet 16. I thought this was really the best year that the conference has had since realignment, or one of the best years. And you could make a case three of the most 6 or 7 most disappointing first round performances came out of the Big East. We talked about Seton Hall getting blown out by TCU. We talked about Connecticut losing to New Mexico State, and then of course Marquette getting run of the gym by North Carolina. I mean, those were 3 really disappointing performances. Of course, you had Xavier as well, playing themselves off the bubble a couple of weeks ago. So my Big East, I thought this was the year we'd get more than 2 teams in the Sweet 16. Again, it's Villanova, and then maybe one other team, and then kind of everyone else. I did think Creighton had an impressive weekend, winning over San Diego State, and then really going toe to toe with Kansas. But as a whole, I really would have liked to see the Big East get 3 teams in the Sweet 16 this year. So unfortunately, I'm a little upset by that.
Do you think if Ryan Kalkbrenner was healthy, they could have won that game?
Yeah, I mean, they were right there. Yeah, I mean, that was a close game in the final couple of minutes. Yeah, and losing a guy like that. I mean, but it just speaks to the job that McDermott did this season. Losing his point guard Nemhard earlier in the season, they lose Kalkbrenner then. I mean, that's two of your starters right there, and you're still wired, down to the wire against number one seed in the second round. After making a Sweet 16 and losing the entire roster last year, honestly, you can make a case that Creighton is a winner of this tournament as well, even losing in the second round. Just because the future of that program is so bright. They have a great head coach, and they should be very, very proud of the season that they had.
Yeah, I think my biggest loser of the weekend, we'll do a couple more after this, the SEC. Because we talked coming in here about how, Kentucky can win national championship. Auburn's one of the best teams in the country. Tennessee's one of the hottest teams in the country. They're all out. LSU went out in the first round of Iowa State, which I was disappointed because I thought they were be better than that. Alabama, and they lost to Notre Dame. So they get one team through in the Sweet 16 to Arkansas, which probably get run out of the gym by Gonzaga on Thursday night. And they have the same number of teams in the Sweet 16 as the MAC, and that's not good.
Yeah, a very disappointing first round for the SEC, and I don't really know if that speaks to their conference being overrated or anything like that. I think they just didn't play well in the first round. It's disappointing for them for sure. Another loser that I have is Wisconsin. Playing an hour away from their campus in Milwaukee, and they just play a really ugly game the other night against Iowa State. Losing that game, they just couldn't hit a shot in that game. What was the final score? 54-49. I mean, 55 points would have won you an NCAA tournament game, and you couldn't get to it. That's disappointing. And then again, you throw in the fact that they were an hour away from home, basically playing in front of a home crowd. A really, really disappointing result for Wisconsin, who I thought could have made a run. I didn't pick them to go too far, but I could have seen them, making kind of a run with Johnny Davis, the team that they have. But unfortunately, they fall way, way short of the of doing anything, and having it be at home is just 10 times worse.
Yeah, I'm going to build on your Wisconsin loser and just say the whole Big Ten's a loser again because the last two tournaments, they've gotten 18 NCAA tournament bids, 9 each year. They've gotten 3 teams total to the Sweet 16. Two of them belong to Michigan, which credit to Michigan because they came out of this as 11 seed. They beat Colorado State and Tennessee to get there.
Yeah.
Purdue struggled against Texas, so they managed to get through there. But when you're getting 18 bids into the NCAA tournament on a 2-year span, you should have more than 3 teams get this far, and the odds of them winning a title are pretty slim with the pool they have left, unless Purdue gets really hot here. But this is a conference that all we hear about is like they haven't won a national championship since 2000. You're seeing why with how they perform the tournament.
Yeah, and it's the same story every year with the Big Ten. It's the regular season. It's are they going to get 10, 11 teams in the NCAA tournament? And then you look in the second weekend, and like we mentioned, there's 1, there's 2, there's 3 teams left. It seems like it's a yearly thing now with the Big Ten that these teams just don't play well in the NCAA's. I don't know what it is. Maybe it's just the style of play. I can't believe that of the entire Big Ten, the whole conference is overrated, but you kind of have to start to at least think that a little bit with these NCAA tournament performances last season and now this season. It's a letdown, and like you mentioned, Purdue I would say is really the only hope now for them to get a national title contender to break that streak, because I don't think Michigan has that type of a run left in them. So yeah, certainly a letdown from the Big Ten as a whole. In terms of my final loser, I'm going to say Murray State, to be honest with you. A chance, you've won how many games in a row? You get the gift of all gifts. They were probably the biggest St. Peter's fans in the world on Friday night when St. Peter's takes down Kentucky. You win your game or right after that, you move on, and then to lose to St. Peter's, and like we mentioned, in a game that they were never really in. They trailed but they were really at an arm's length that entire game. To fall behind and to never really make a fight in that game against St. Peter's, it's a letdown, because like we mentioned, these programs, when you get that chance at like a one shining moment, when you get that chance at kind of a program defining moment, and you let it slip, that's a letdown. And Murray State was a team that had won so many games coming in. They could have been, again, hey, remember when Murray State made that Sweet 16 in 2022? That was awesome. They let that go, and they, to let it go to a 15 seed when you're kind of gifted that opportunity in the second round, got to be a letdown for them.
Yeah, I'm going to throw as the last one the Mountain West because they got 4 teams in. They went 0-4. We lost Wyoming in the first 4, and the other 3 all lost in the first round. And this is a league we've been arguing for respect for. The casual fan is never going to respect it and say, oh, you get 4 teams in, none of them can win a game. Like, I get some of them are matchup problems, but still, you got to do better.
Yeah, yeah, and certainly a letdown for the Mountain West. I mean, what a season for them overall. For that conference to get four teams in the NCAA tournament for what's usually a one or a two bid league to get four is incredible. They lost some tough games in the first round. Colorado State had a lead over Michigan. San Diego State loses in overtime against Creighton. Boise State loses a tough game to Memphis. They played well. They were in these games, just couldn't close them out though. And like you mentioned, not going to help in terms of getting you, respect, in terms of getting you, maybe bumped up a little bit in that hierarchy. They're still going to be kind of looked at as that mid-major type conference, which is a letdown for them because they really had a great season as a conference.
Yeah, they did. And I think in terms of like the Big Ten teams, I'm very like the one I felt very good calling early is like Iowa was getting massively overrated by people heading into the tournament because they got hot. They won
Mhm.
the Big Ten. This is a team for a long time that had not won a quad one game. They kind of flew under the radars. They had greater metrics than North Carolina did, but you can't lose to Richmond. I'm sorry.
Mhm.
You just can't.
hmm Yeah, Iowa felt like they got that kind of treatment that one or two teams gets every year when they win their conference tournament, and maybe that was like the last one that everyone saw or something like that, and everyone kind of picks them to make a run off of that. Yeah, but no, that yeah, you could have seen that coming. They were overseeded for sure, and I didn't have them going too far either. I didn't see a big run out of them, but we see this every year. There seems like there's maybe one or two teams that win their conference tournament and then lose their first NCAA tournament game. It's not a I don't think the conference tournament is at all really indicative of what's going to happen in the NCAA's. That's why it's called madness, right? Like anything can happen in the NCAA's. I think some coaches would even prefer to lose earlier in their conference tournament to have more rest going into the NCAA. So yeah, that one was you can see it coming.
Tennessee's right there, that same group too, where everybody was very high in them. I saw us included after they ran through the SEC tournament. They beat Kentucky. They win the thing. They knocked Texas A&M out of the field. And then Rick Barnes again, another March letdown.
Yeah, yep, yeah, exact same story with them. Another team that was riding high with the conference tournament title and then loses in the second round. Yeah. Yeah, it's in conference tournaments, they're not really indicative of what's going to happen in a week, which is why it's called March Madness.
It is West Clark, man. Now let's look ahead to the Sweet 16 here. Look at we'll start off first with the West region here. I mean, I'm gonna get my big graphic up on the screen here from CBS Sports' page, so you can just look at. We'll start on the top with the West and the South because they're the ones that are playing on Thursday here. The West, the chalk held. The only reason where it did, yeah, Gonzaga and Arkansas on the first game there. Texas Tech and Duke, after Duke survives, they on the 20 to 6 run to end the game against Michigan State here. These two games, I think, this is probably the best overall pot of the four that are left.
Yeah, yeah, we get chalk, and sometimes that's not a bad thing, because it leads to two really fun matchups in the Sweet 16. Arkansas and Gonzaga, and then Texas Tech and Duke, and you're leading to a possible Duke Gonzaga, Duke Arkansas, Elite Eight game on Saturday. That's a lot of fun. Can Texas Tech play spoiler? Can they knock Duke out? Yeah, sometimes the chalk is not a bad thing because it leads to really fun Sweet 16 matchups like we see here. Yeah, I would say probably the best two overall matchup or best combined overall matchups are in the West.
Yeah, I think the game I want to see is that Texas Tech Duke game because Texas Tech did have the massive struggles against Notre Dame where they could not put the ball in the bucket for a while there. But their defense is as good as anybody's in the country. They have 62 points to Montana State, 53 in Notre Dame here. And I want to see Duke showed some guts by coming back against Michigan State and closing out the game like that. Will that carry over? Because you need that kind of performance to be a Texas Tech team that is as rugged on D as they are.
Yeah, exactly. We'll see how Duke is able to close out. If they fall behind by a couple of points against Texas Tech, it might not be the same story. And yeah, Texas Tech is a really solid defensive team. That's kind of their motto, their identity. It's going to be interesting to see how Duke is able to combat that with a couple of days to prepare.
Yeah, I think you are you agree with me that Gonzaga is going to run all over Arkansas?
I could see that. Yeah, I mean, they were tested by Memphis for sure. I was surprised by that because I thought they were going to really run Memphis out of the gym, and they did not. But I could see that. I certainly don't see Arkansas winning that game. I think Gonzaga is going to the Final Four out of this region. But yeah, wouldn't shock me if they kind of beat up on Arkansas a little bit.
Yeah, because Arkansas to try and bully ball you, try and get past you. That works on smaller schools. That's not going to work on Gonzaga.
Yeah, and you're not scoring in the 50s and beating Gonzaga. It's just it's not going to happen in this round.
No, it's not. Let's go across the way to the South region here. We have a very, very interesting game all of a sudden here, considering Arizona has had some issues in the first two games. They get Houston here in the one side, and they get Villanova and Michigan on the other side. And I think again in this one, I think they're more compelling games later.
Yeah, yeah. A very interesting Arizona Houston game. Arizona, my pick to win the whole thing. I thought that they were, I just think that they're the best team in the country, to be honest with you. And Houston, we mentioned them before. You look up and they're back in a Sweet 16 after a Final Four. I think I saw that they beat their first single digit seed in the NCAA tournament since like the mid 80s when they beat Illinois on Sunday. So very, very cool for them. And yeah, I mean, again, a Houston team that has not really gotten a lot of publicity all season long, that has kind of flown under the radar all season long. And now here they are as a 5 seed. If they can take down Arizona, they are into the Elite Eight once again. Again, just an incredible, incredible job by Kelvin Sampson. What a job he's done there in really completely turning that program around from what they were a couple of years ago before he got there. And yeah, in the bottom, Michigan Villanova. Well, a classic matchup, rematch of the 2018 national title game. Michigan, I think I said it last week. We both said Michigan should have been in the first four. We both couldn't understand why they were an 11 seed. And I said I'm picking them to win in the first round because I just see them making a run because that's how March goes, and that's exactly what happened. Sometimes things make no sense. Sometimes the teams that get kind of overseeded end up making a run, and that's exactly what happened here. Props to them again for kind of turning their season around, and they get a Villanova team that I think should feel pretty confident that they can get by them. And then I'm hoping for an Arizona Villanova game in the Elite Eight. I think that would be a lot of fun.
Yeah, I think Villanova is going to get past Michigan. I think Hunter Dixon's obviously a matchup problem. I think they have too much overall talent to overwhelm the
hmm
Wolverines here. The Arizona
hmm
Houston game, I forgot to mention earlier here. If Arizona lost that game in overtime, we would never heard the end about how Ben Mathurin dunked instead of laying it up to beat the clock.
Yeah, that's just such bad awareness there. You got to look up and see how much time you got left. You do a layup, game's over. There's no way that you would not have gotten a layup off there in the closing seconds. You gotta lay that up there.
Yeah, and I do think the other concerning thing for Arizona here is that obviously the South Regionals is in San Antonio, so Houston's gonna have a big crowd there.
Yeah, yeah, could be a kind of a home away from home game for Houston. Very intriguing matchup. I see Arizona getting by, but I think Houston will give them some problems for sure. I think it could be very similar to what we saw with their game against TCU.
Yeah, so let's go down to the bottom of the bracket here. We'll start out here in the Midwest. We'll go and basically see your order here. You guys, we talked about this earlier. Kansas Providence. I don't think this is going to be close. I don't really feel like that we saw at the end of the year when Providence played teams of more talent than they are, not shorthanded, they get run off the court. I can see the same thing here. I know Kansas plays just six, but their six are really damn good.
Yeah, I'll be rooting for Providence. I want to see them make a run here. They're one of the few Big East teams that I actually root for in March because I don't really have too much against them. But I don't. Yeah, I see Kansas kind of having their way with them for sure. Like I mentioned, incredible accomplishment for Providence to make it to the Sweet 16, to make it to the second weekend, to be a nationally ranked team for a good portion of the season, to win a Big East regular season title. But I see that run ending here. I think Kansas is just far better than them, like you mentioned, from a talent perspective. And yeah, I see this game being, anywhere from like an 8 to 10 point win for Kansas.
Yeah, and also all the credit in the world to Iowa State going from 2 wins a year ago to the Sweet 16 here. But considering what game is up against on the other side, there's going to be a very, very small audience watching Iowa State Miami in the other game.
Yeah, that's probably going to be the least watched game of the entire weekend. Iowa State, Miami. You get two double digit seeds. Probably the least interesting game for the entire weekend as well. But like you mentioned, again, Iowa State 2 wins to the Sweet 16. Anyone that tells you that rebuilds take time and that it takes 3-4 years to rebuild a program, look at Iowa State. It does not. If you have the right coach, if you got the right players, you can turn it around just like that in college basketball. Especially if you're in a power conference and you have that type of money. It's not a be all end all thing where, it's going to take you 4 years to rebuild the program. You can do it very, very quickly. Credit to them. In that game, I really could see it going either way. Like we mentioned before, I think Kansas is going to walk to the Final Four over whoever they end up playing if they get by Providence.
Yeah, I do think also Iowa State scored a combined 113 points in 2 games. They got to do a lot better than that if they want to get out of this region.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. You're not going to win again. Eventually, you're going to catch a team that's going to, have a hot shooting night or something like that. You're not going to go all the way to the Final Four, winning games in the 50s. I just don't see that happening.
All right, now our last region, East out in Philly here. This is the chaos region where we lost our 1 and our 2 here. We have St. Peter's, our Cinderella story, now gets a much closer game. They got a big. I think you get the whole student body there on Friday night against against Purdue in their game. I think that one. I think the thing I worry about with them is that Purdue, the size advantage is just such a big deal. I mean, Kentucky really had just Oscar Tshiebwe as a big deal, but I don't know how St. Peter's is going to slow down both Trevion Williams and Zach Edey.
Yeah, yeah. They went in as big underdogs against Kentucky last week, and they were able to pull it off. But does lightning strike twice? I don't know. I think the clock probably strikes midnight on them here. We saw a lot of chaos in this region though, and honestly, it was good chaos because it ended up with two very, very interesting matchups in this round for sure. And like you mentioned, starting with this St. Peter's and Purdue game. I think Purdue gets by. Unfortunately, I would think that it ends for St. Peter's, but again, an incredible run for them. But I think Purdue has a pretty clear path here to the Final Four, starting with this game against St. Peter's.
Yeah, I think also St. Peter's did like even yeoman's work for the MAC here because the MAC as a conference had never got a team to the Sweet 16 before this year. And I mean, we've seen Iona get there a bunch of times. They couldn't really win a game. We've seen Manhattan win a game in the past and not be able to follow it up. And like how it works are the teams that advance get these tournament units for their conferences. And this is a lot of money that St. Peter's is bringing into the MAC, which is coming. It's going to have a little turmoil right now because Monmouth is leaving. There's rumors that Fairfield could be seeking the exits and Siena could be seeking the exits. So like this is a good spot for the league to be able to have the extra cash and help some of these programs out.
Yeah, exactly. Like I mentioned before, with how that's kind of a school changing run for them. They're going to have a lot of new admissions. I'm sure they're going to make a lot of money off of this because it's basically free advertising for your school. And yeah, the conference should do well as well, or have a lot of help as well with this run. When you've never had one of these before, it shines a little bit of a light on your conference. Yeah, so very, very good for the MAC to have a team finally make it to the Sweet 16, and hopefully helps kind of ease some of the troubles that they've been having recently.
Yeah, and the last game of this round here, UCLA, North Carolina, the blue blood matchup of all blue blood matchups here between the two of the most successful programs in college basketball. And I know CBS is thrilled they got it. It's the late game on Friday night, and I think this is a lot of fun. For me, the thing I'd be worried about is just like the North Carolina collapse. I know they didn't have Manic, and I know that they had some foul trouble there, lost their point guard to foul situation early in that rate comeback from the Bears. But I like UCLA in this matchup.
Yeah, yeah, I think UCLA gets by as well. It's the true main event of the first two nights. You talk about some of these games, and there are some really, really good games, but nothing beats two blue bloods going at it in the second weekend game. North Carolina, UCLA. I've been high on UCLA all season long. I think that they're poised to make another deep run, and I think that we're going to see it here. Like you mentioned, North Carolina, they were able to hold off Baylor. It was an impressive job by them to do so, to win that game in overtime after collapsing like they did in the final 10 minutes. But I do think that their run heads here, and I think it's going to be a UCLA and Purdue Elite Eight in that region.
All right, so let's set out the Final Four here. Tell me who you had in there originally and who you have now in the Final Four.
So I actually have not lost any of my Final Four teams, believe it or not. I had Purdue coming out of the East, and they are still alive. I have Kansas out of the Midwest, and they look pretty good so far. In the South, I had Arizona, who's still alive and looks decent, and I have Gonzaga actually. So I'm actually still alive with all four of my Final Four teams. I'm very proud of myself. For the first time in a while, I've actually gone into the second weekend with my Final Four intact. So I'm happy about that.
Are you gonna? Do you feel good about your pick? Would you stick with that if you're given the choice to restart, or would you take somebody out?
I would definitely stick with Gonzaga and Arizona. I do think that they will get through their respective regions as the one seed, and I'm going to stick with Kansas as well. Actually, thinking about it, it's a toss up with me between UCLA and Purdue. I could go either way. I've loved both of those programs. I wish they weren't in the same region. I would have picked them both to go to the Final Four. I love both of them all season long. So I could really go either way with those. But the 3-1 seeds, I think we're going to see 3-1 seeds at least in the, or we won't see four. I think we're going to see 3-1 seeds in the Final Four.
Yeah, I think what I'm looking at right now here. I mean, I originally had Gonzaga and Kansas there. I get burned by the SEC. I had Kentucky getting there out of the South, and I had Tennessee actually in the championship game. I was very high on them, so they burned me. So I think I would stick with Gonzaga out west. I think the Memphis game was a good like tune up for them to sort of
Yeah.
get that habit of winning a big spot here. Kansas is not losing in the South in the Midwest. They are not. I'm sorry. Nobody in that region is challenging them unless like the entire Kansas team gets hurt in a game. So
Yeah.
I think in the East, the East, I originally had Kentucky. I had UCLA in the Elite Eight, though. I did have Bear going on early. I think I will go with the Bruins there. I do feel like Purdue's lack of defense is going to show up and bite them at the worst possible time. And
Yeah. Go ahead.
I think in the South is tricky because Arizona scared me with the way they play against TCU because that game should not have been as close as it was. So I am tempted very heavily to pick Villanova to get to the Final Four, but I'm not going to. I'm going to stick with Arizona very reluctantly.
Yeah, Villanova. I think I said a few weeks ago, I think that they have potential for the Final Four depending on the matchups. And you look at the way that the matchups has broke for them. They get an 11 seed in the Sweet 16, so they could be one win away. I don't think that they're going to match up too great with Arizona, but that would be a fun game if we got to see it. So, I could see Villanova coming out of that region over Arizona, but I'm going to stick with Arizona.
I think the sleeper in this whole scenario here, I think it's Houston's the sleeper here. I think if Houston has a good shot to get by Arizona, they're gonna get to the Final Four again.
Yeah. Houston is that one team. Again, they've just been under the radar all season long. No one has really been talking about them. Could we see them, make it a little bit of a run? Last year they make that Final Four run. They didn't have to beat any single digit seeds. This season they might have to go through a 1 and a 2 seed to get there. So that'll be very very interesting to see if Houston could pull it off. But I agree with you. Yeah, if they are that one team that's going to kind of sneak into the Final Four, I would say it's them.
Absolutely, Troy. Thanks for all the time. Really appreciate it. Before I let you go, people follow on social media, keep up with some of the stuff you're doing at the Seeing Red podcast.
Mike, always a pleasure. You can follow me on Twitter at Troy Mauriello. Yeah, I do the Seeing Red podcast. We cover St. John's basketball. We're in off-season mode. A lot of stuff going on with them. So if you're a fan of the Red Storm, check it out.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, obviously, we saw the big news that Mike Anderson not ended up going to Tulsa. He decided to stay there. The Tulsa not want to pay the buyout, which I think makes sense. I know. Big year for them next year. They got to get more out of the portal and schedule better.
Yeah, it's make or break year for them. If Anderson cannot make the NCAA's in year 4, I think that the calls for his job are really going to be pretty loud at that point, and they might have to make a decision. I think that's why a lot of fans, including myself, were kind of hoping that that decision would just be made for them, and he would go to Tulsa so they can kind of speed up that process. But we'll see how it plays out. It's always fun. The offseason is always fun with St. John, so definitely a lot to talk about with them.
Yeah, and one guy I'm curious about, considering you're very tapped in here with the program, you're paying close attention to them. I feel like for me, from what I've seen this year, I feel like Posh Eisner is definitely going to transfer out.
Yeah, I don't know. I've heard that he really likes Anderson. I've heard that I haven't heard anything about him considering it just yet. But yeah, it seems like every single offseason, St. John's gets at least 1 or 2 guys that it really doesn't make sense for them to transfer. So I wouldn't really rule anything out with them. I guess the only thing that you could say is for sure is that Julian Champagny is going to the draft. I don't see any way that he comes back. But yeah, nothing would surprise me. That system is kind of fits him so well, the style of player that he is and the style of play that they play. But yeah, it would nothing, no offseason rumors or bad things happening to St. John's ever surprise me. So if he transfers out, I would not be shocked.
Absolutely, Troy. Thanks for all the time. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, Mike.